Good afternoon. We're here today to discuss the fact that's known to all of us, and that is there's too much violent crime in Milwaukee. There's too much violence, too much firearms-related violence in Milwaukee. I'm going to give you a few data points to start and give you some context where we are this year compared to where we were last year. Talk about some of the things we did this last weekend, give you the backgrounds of some of our victims of these offenses, and try to provide some perspective as well as some notion as to what we believe needs to be done going forward, both those things within our power, but those things that are not within the power of Milwaukee alone to affect. When we look at this year, 2013 compared to 2012, year to date, we've got 3 more homicides than we did this year this time last year. We've had 49 homicides year to date compared to 46 in 2012. In 2011, we had 51 homicides year to date. In the first weekend of August last year in 2012, that first weekend, we had 6 non-fatal shootings, but no homicides. First weekend of August in 2013, we had 8 non-fatal shootings and 3 homicides. If you add June and July's shootings together, we're up 19%. Over June and July of 2013, we're up 19% over non-fatal shootings in 2012. The 8-year average for June and July is 119 non-fatal shootings. Comparing as we look at our violence most recently, we obviously made a major investment this past weekend in a number of initiatives. As you know, we were dealing with the National Governors Association, the Air and Water Show, a number of other events as well. But we made a commitment at the same time to fully staff our district personnel as well, so that we did not draw away from our anti-crime efforts as we were policing downtown and State Fair. In the last weekend, we made 220 arrests for 580 charges. We locked up 56 people for disorderly conduct, 22 people for battery, 14 people for possession of a concealed weapon, 13 drunk drivers. We arrested 7 burglars, 3 armed robbers, 3 individuals who were arrested for first-degree recklessly endangering safety, 2 were arrested for endangering safety with a dangerous weapon, and 1 was arrested for first-degree intentional homicide. What we found this weekend is what we have found consistently these last number of years. The firearms-related violence and the deadly violence is tightly concentrated, overwhelmingly among those who have chosen a criminal lifestyle. Now, that doesn't minimize anything, it doesn't negate the seriousness of it, but it shows the dimension of the problem we are facing, which is deterring violence among the criminal community. I'm not going to give you names here, but I'm just going to describe 4 shooting victims over the last weekend who are poster children for our challenges of dealing with career criminals and their involvement in firearms-related violence. On Friday, August 2nd, at 10:30 at night, we had a shooting. That individual is on life support right now at Frederick Hospital. His first arrest was at age 12 for first-degree sexual assault. He's been arrested by the Milwaukee Police Department 3 times, 2 of those times for felonies. On Saturday, August 3rd at 2:15 a.m., an individual was shot and killed. His first arrest was at age 17 for possession with intent to deliver marijuana. He was arrested by the Milwaukee Police Department 13 times in 10 years. 3 of his 13 arrests involved use or illegal possession of a firearm. At the time of his death, he was on parole for armed robbery. On Sunday, August 4th, 12:40, we had another homicide. This victim's first arrest was at age 11 for disorderly conduct by use of a dangerous weapon, a firearm. He was arrested by the Milwaukee Police Department 26 times in 10 years, and 15 of those 26 arrests involved the use or illegal possession of a firearm. At the time of his death, he was on parole for armed robbery. On Sunday, August 4th, we had another shooting The individual was released from the hospital. His first arrest was at age 12. He's been arrested 21 times in 6 years. 9 of those 21 arrests were for felony arrests involving the use or illegal possession of a firearm. This individual is on probation and parole for burglary while armed with a dangerous weapon. Now, we face a significant issue in Milwaukee involving our criminal community and its use and access to firearms. Both the mayor and I have stressed over the years our legal processes, specifically our state statutes, need to take cognizance of the fact that the problems of firearms in the hands of criminals are separate and apart from the usual values, debate, and ideological discussions of Second Amendment rights. Our biggest challenge in Milwaukee right now is that for people who have chosen a lifestyle, it is more dangerous for them. If they're career criminals, it is more dangerous for them to get caught without a gun than to get caught with a gun. In Wisconsin, no matter how many times you are caught illegally carrying a firearm, it remains a misdemeanor. Time and again, our dead people have been arrested in the past for illegal possession of a firearm. Time and again, our homicide suspects have been arrested before for illegal possession of a firearm. Now, there's lots of talk, lots of loose talk about the New York miracle. What's often forgotten was the crucial aspect of the New York miracle was a 3-year minimum mandatory sentence for illegally carrying a firearm. Now, we believe in the Milwaukee Police Department. Our job is to prevent crime. We want to prevent the next shooting. We want to prevent the next homicide. We prevent them by locking people up illegally carrying firearms. But if they suffer no significant consequence for that decision, they are going to use it, and do. Year after year after year, 85% of our victims and offenders have extensive criminal records, often involving illegal possession of a firearm. Now, we've called on the state before with the greatest respect and deference to the Second Amendment to recognize that when people illegally carry a firearm, it is a recipe for homicide. Is it a recipe for shooting? There must be a criminal justice sanction. Related to that problem is another issue unique to Milwaukee's problems. In Milwaukee, you can be a career criminal and qualify for a firearms permit. That's correct. You can be a career criminal and qualify for a concealed carry permit. And we have already arrested career criminals in possession of lawfully carried firearms. Now, Wisconsin defines a habitual offender as someone who is eligible for enhanced sentences when they're arrested for any other crime. And being an habitual offender is 1 felony or 3 misdemeanor arrests in a 2-year period. Excuse me, a 5-year period. Many of our career criminals have jackets full of misdemeanor arrests or misdemeanor convictions, even though they were arrested for felonies. And no criminal justice system in any city in America has enough money to prosecute every single felon we arrest. It simply is a great error in public policy to create a situation in which we can lawfully arm our career criminals. And it's the 2 things above all we need. We need to stop that practice, and we need to make sure that if you're caught illegally carrying a firearm, you're going to go to jail. We cannot prevent shootings and homicides with any degree of significance until we start altering that mental calculation of our career criminals. And right now, they've got the advantage. So we'll be available for follow-up. I know the mayor wants to address this issue as well. You know, he's been very active in the Mayor is Against Illegal Guns movement. In fact, he's one of the charter members. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Chief. As Chief Flynn indicated, our police department was very busy this past weekend. The officers who served this police force were proactive. They were out there making arrests. They were doing everything that they can do to make this a safer city. So I have no quarrel with the work that they have done over the last 24, 48, 72 hours. I have no quarrel with the work that they do. They are doing as much as they can. We also know that there are parts of this city that just were fantastic this weekend. The National Governors Association, the Air Show, the African World Festival were all tremendous events where literally tens of thousands of people were able to gather in our city and have a fabulous time. But we also know that there were neighborhoods this weekend where there was far too much violence. And as the chief indicated, what we have to do is we have to change the calculus. The calculus right now is that we have a situation where individuals who cannot legally possess guns are possessing them. Oftentimes, they get into arguments with other people who cannot legally possess guns. So the vast majority of the victims of crime this weekend were people that had some sort of criminal background, is my understanding.
That's correct.
The vast majority of the suspects had some type of criminal background. And so given what happened this weekend, here's what's going to happen. You've got people who are either dead, severely injured, or injured as a result of the violence. You've got people who committed the violence. Some people will be buried. Other people might be permanently damaged. Their health might be permanently damaged. You might have some who are locked up. Hopefully every single one of them will be locked up. Anybody who pulled the trigger. But it all is happening after the violence occurred. We have to find a way to make sure we're doing everything we can to reduce the violence before it occurs. That's where we desperately need the state's help. The state needs to change the laws and make it clear that if a person cannot legally possess a firearm, if they choose to possess a firearm, there will be a 3-year mandatory minimum sentence. It's that simple. We have to send that clear a message. If you cannot legally possess a firearm in this state, and you do so, you have to know there are consequences. As the chief has said, right now, the consequences for carrying a gun when you legally cannot carry a gun are actually less than being out on the street with the gun. And if we are going to change this, and I am committed to changing this, I am committed to reducing the violence in this city, we must have the state's help. So we're asking for a very clear change in the state's law. If you are a person who cannot legally possess a gun and you do so, there has to be a mandatory minimum sentence so we can send this message. And the reality that we're facing right now is the vast majority of the victims are young African American men. If you look at the statistics from this weekend, all the people that were shot on Friday and Saturday night were men. The average age was 25. 85, 90% of them were African Americans. And what we have to do if we're going to reduce the violence in the African American community is get the illegal guns out of not only that community, but the entire city of Milwaukee. That's why we need the help of the state right now. Any questions? We're happy to answer any questions.
Were a lot of these shootings drug related?
The majority of them were disputes. The majority of them were arguments among people with criminal backgrounds who had some level of respect to maintain or some level of street cred to maintain, you know, whatever that is, whatever was in their heads. But the vast majority of them were disputes. We have some indication that some of the violence on South Side was related to a particular criminal group that we're well aware of, and we're looking into that. And you know, there is a drug nexus with some shootings all the time, but the overwhelming majority of these shootings were arguments and fights among people that knew each other or vaguely knew each other from the street.
So you're pleading for some laws to change, but in the interim, what is your department going to do to make sure we don't see another 19% increase in the next 2 months?
Well, I mean, we're going to keep doing what we do. I mean, we use technology such as ShotSpotter. We use computer analysis to guide our deployments. I mean, we're on the scene. We're making the arrests. The point I'm trying to make is that our goal is to prevent crime. And there are tools at our disposal. If we can remove from the streets those who want to carry guns and use them to shoot people, we're going to have a very significant impact to the levels of firearms violence. But there wasn't a guy or gal who got shot last weekend who hasn't been arrested before. And I dare say when we clear some of these other crimes and lock up those folks, we're going to find they've all been well acquainted with the criminal justice system before, and in all likelihood have got caught at least once with a gun. So I'm not making any excuses. What I am saying is that from the big picture, if we're going to have a long-term impact on the levels of violence in our city, we need some legal tools that we can't provide ourselves. And this has to be an intelligent discussion. I know this needs to be debated, but we need to get over the culture war silliness and say, practically speaking, given the level of violence and its concentration among career criminals, what are the practical things that can be done using the criminal law intelligently to reduce that? That's where we need the help. And we need grown-up talk, looking at grown-up statistics and grown-up facts to get to that. All right? Nobody's saying that law-abiding people in these high-crime neighborhoods should not have access to concealed carry. I don't blame any law-abiding person in some of these neighborhoods to have access to concealed carry. But those folks want those guns precisely because the career criminals using the guns aren't suffering significant sanctions. Okay, they're not afraid of us. They're not afraid of the system. And we've got to make them afraid to get arrested. They've got to be more worried about getting caught by us than getting caught by their rivals.
Chief, your neighborhood task force has tried to study predictive behavior to anticipate these kinds of shootings and events. Did that bear any fruit at all over the weekend?
Well, we made a number of arrests shortly after some of these shootings. We've arrested several people in possession of firearms. We know where the firearms are concentrated. I mean, we've got the data to say here are the places most likely to be shootings, and that's where we put our people. You know, and that gets us into that other trick bag again of the culture wars. All right, there are some folks out there who want to talk about racial profiling when we're trying to put our coppers in the neighborhoods that are most vulnerable, that are suffering the dead young men. We're there with them, making an impact. Okay, this isn't about racial profiling. This isn't about Second Amendment rights. This is about too many young dead people with too ready access to illegal firearms who do not suffer the kinds of consequences that'll get them to change their decision making. That's where we need the help. The community, judging by the level of community meetings we have and 9/11 calls, want relief from this violence. And the relief we need is the relief that'll help us turn every one of those gun arrests into a prevented crime. Right now, I can't turn my gun arrests into prevented crimes because the person that had that gun's going to be out getting another gun, shooting somebody. All right? So we're making arrests left, right, and center. We need teeth in our law, and that teeth is a mandatory sentence.
Would adding more officers help out, having more boots on the ground in these specific neighborhoods?
Well, you can always do more with more. All right? I mean, we're proud of the fact that we've got our people deployed strategically. We're using data to drive the deployments, and we're making lots of arrests. Today, we just swore in another 25 recruits who are starting the police academy today, and I know there are plans next year to add more officers. Obviously, you know, we recognize where we work and the financial stresses the city is under, but you know, our challenge is to do the best we can with the resources the city provides, and I think we're doing a good job.
We all know the reputation that Chicago has. I believe they only had a couple more shootings over the weekend than we had here in Milwaukee. They're a much larger city. Are you concerned that your city is going to get the reputation that Chicago has?
Well, if you look at the data over time, I know the police superintendent in Chicago very well. We have discussions very often. If you look at the demographics of Chicago's highest crime neighborhoods and the demographics of our highest crime neighborhoods, they're the same demographics. All right, 30% poverty rate, 50% unemployment rate, and a large concentration of people housed nearby who've got criminal backgrounds who terrorize to the rest of their neighborhoods with access to firearms. All right, most weekends, if you look at Chicago's violence, it's way higher than ours. But if you factor in the difference in size, it's equivalent. All right, we're facing the identical problems. And so we're going to keep digging at it. But the number one piece of business we need in terms of help is more significant sanctions so that those arrests we make for firearms arrests prevent crimes.
Mayor, Alderman Donovan had some harsh words about your administration's dealing with the violence issue. Just if you had a response to his comments.
Well, I'm going to continue to work with the police chief. I think the police chief and the police department are doing everything they can with the resources they have. I know Alderman Donovan met with Governor Walker earlier this year to ask for more resources. I know the result of that meeting was we got fewer resources, that the governor took away the $455,000 for our community policing. We attempted to have that money restored in joint finance for the shot spotter, which is a very, very effective crime fighting tool, and we were rebuffed there. So the foray that Alderman Donovan has made to, quote, help the city ended up with the city getting $455,000 less from the state.
Sir, when this proposal has been through the legislature before, it already comes up, there's just not enough space to house all these people that need to be housed.
My point here today is, and let's just use this past weekend. If you had 10 individuals who will now be locked up because they have shot someone, then you have another 13 individuals who are either dead or have to have medical treatment. That's very, very expensive right there. And according to the data that the chief has given us, the vast majority of those people would be under some sort of sanction for carrying an illegal weapon and would be locked up ahead of time. If you look at this calculus, I'm going to bet that those individuals, if we catch them all, will probably do a lot of time in prison for shooting someone. So we're going to be paying for it. We're going to be paying for it, and we've had people shot. Why are we waiting till after people are shot before taking action? Let's take action before people are shot by getting the illegal guns off the street and getting the people who possess guns illegally off the street. I think from a mathematical standpoint, we may be ahead. We may be ahead if we do it. But the chief's point again and again is we have to change the calculus, because we can't have individuals on the street who make a decision that they're better off carrying an illegal gun because they're not going to face consequences. If that's what the word is on the street, then we're just fighting without any hope of succeeding. And we have to succeed. And to succeed, we need this change in the law.
Chief, in some of these stressed neighborhoods, I wonder if you could paint a picture a little bit of a guesstimate of how many weapons would you say some of these streets and these households possess? Do you have some sense of that?
Oh, I couldn't begin to say. I mean, I think the facile answer is too many. All I know is that every year we take 2,000 firearms off the streets out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them. That's a lot of guns. You know, that's probably close to 10,000 guns have been taken off the streets in the last 5 or 6 years. So there's a lot of firearms out there. I mean, there are people out there, you know, when you get twisted around the axle of the firearms debate, people want to get into folks will get guns no matter what, yada yada, so don't change the law. Our point here today is that if I catch you with that firearm and put you in jail for 3 years, for the next 3 years I know you're not going to shoot somebody and you're not going to get shot. That's prevention. That's what I'm looking for. Okay? I don't expect to be able to go out there with a giant magnet and suck up all the bad guy guns. What I do expect is that if we're going to be deployed properly and we're on the spot and we make the collar and we bring the guy in handcuffs, something should happen to him of some significance. And because it isn't right now, the culture of retaliatory violence that exists is aided and abetted by the fact that it's more dangerous to see your enemy without your gun than with him. And we've got to get those guys thinking differently. All right, there's too much support out there for their behavior now from their peer group. And their behavior is holding entire neighborhoods hostage. There are entire neighborhoods out there that are never going to realize their potential because of the violence. Because children are literally at risk of getting shot or wounded in crossfires. Kids don't get to play outside. Or as the mayor likes to say, grandmas don't get to sit on porches. It is a real issue. It breaks down the very fabric of viability that neighborhoods depend upon. And we're making arrests left and right. It's not like we're not making the arrests. But if the sanctions aren't available, then the preventive power of those arrests is undercut.